Lies, a Draco X Reader, by Draco X Readers. Chapter 3. Did you do it? You walk into the great hall. It was lit up by many floating candles. The ceiling was bewitched, as always. The 4 long house tables were filled with students. Food was already on the tables. Teachers were eating, and you secretly hoped that you missed Dumbledore's boring speech. You said your goodbyes to Harry and walked over to the Slytherin table. You saw one of your Slytherin friends, your friend's name here, a female, saving you a seat. You hurried over to the table and sat down. You weren't best friends with her, but she was one of the only Slytherin that kind of liked you. It was sometimes nice to have someone, but you didn't talk that often. "Hi, I thought I'd save you a seat. I didn't see you around," she immediately said when you approached her. "I missed the carriages," you sighed. "What else did I miss?" "Just a sorting session." You sighed in disappointment. That meant you had to listen to Dumbledore's speech. You sat down on the bench and grabbed some food. When you looked to the right, you saw Draco and his friends. Draco was talking with them. He was completely in his own zone. He wasn't eating, not that you cared. It was just weird. Normally he would make fun of every other table, or other people on the table. You quickly looked away and continued grabbing some food. You knew you had to hurry with eating. "Very best evenings to you all," Dumbledore said. This was Dumbledore's yearly moment to shine. The long speeches that were meant to be interesting but normally weren't. Just lots of information which you didn't want to involve with in the first place. The Forbidden Forest where you end up with detention anyways. New teachers every year. Dementors staying at the school which do end up attacking students even though he says they won't. A wizard tournament which most of the schools can't even compete in, but Harry magically seems to get in. A change in schools that doesn't last longer than a year because of Umbridge. What is it going to be this year? First off, let me introduce the newest member of our staff, Horace Slughorn. A new teacher! Surprise! Everyone started applauding, and he got up and waved. You just joined in with applauding. Professor Slughorn, I'm happy to say, has agreed to resume his own post as potions master. So, no Snape for potions? That was new. He always wanted to have the DADA post at Hogwarts, Defense Against the Dark Arts. Maybe he was going to do that. You never know. Maybe he wasn't reaching at all. That would be awesome. Snape didn't really like you. You didn't know why. You never talked or forgot your homework. Maybe that was just the way he was. Meanwhile, with position of defense against the dark arts will be taken by Professor Snape. A lot of people started asking why Snape. Indeed, why Snape? There was a small applause. Would Snape be good at teaching anything else but potions? This was the time to find out. You looked along the table. Most Slytherins were applauding. Your eyes got stuck on Draco again. He was just staring at the table while leaning his head on his hands. He was so different from when you saw him in the forest. You didn't get the change. You looked away from him and back at Dumbledore. As you know, each and every one of you was searched upon your arrival tonight. You have the right to know why. It was a bit weird, knowing that a guy went through your bags, your clothes, underwear, awkward. If anything was missing, you would definitely complain somewhere. Once there was a young man like you. He was going to tell you a story at a time like this. Sat in this very hall, walked these corridors, slept under the same roof. He seemed to the whole world a student like any other. He sounded like a normal student to you. Did he attend classes as well? Take a sip from your drink. His name? Tom Riddle. And the sip you just took flew across the table. Why did he bring up Tom Riddle? Voldemort himself? Wasn't it dangerous enough that he was back? Go on, bring him up. Say his name and we'll all die. Today, of course, he's known all over the world by another name. This is why I stand looking out upon you all tonight. I'm reminded of a sobering fact. Each and every day, every hour, this very minute perhaps, dark forces attempt to penetrate the castle walls. But in the end, their greatest weapon is you. Just something to think about. Now off to bed, he finished. Everyone slowly got up. You looked at your half-finished plate. You were still hungry. You quickly took another bite before getting up. While following the other Slytherins to the corridor, you passed Draco, who was still in his zone. You ignored it and made your way to the dungeons. The Slytherin common room is below the lake. If you were lucky, you could sometimes see squids swimming by the small windows in the common room. The room was dimly lit with green lights. All furniture was made of black leather. There were a few couches and a few chairs. There was a fireplace and some things on top of it. You sat down on one of the couches. Your friend was already gone, probably off to bed. You looked around. Most of the Slytherins slowly went upstairs. You weren't tired at all. You just grabbed a book and decided to read. The common room slowly became quiet. After a few minutes, you heard someone come in. You didn't want to look up and get distracted. You just continued reading. The person took a few steps and then stood still. You felt his or her eyes burning. You waited until it would stop, but it seemed to take ages. Am I doing interesting stuff, or do you have to keep staring? You asked before looking up. You saw Draco standing there. He looked at you, but you already knew that. Why him? Why this? Can you stop? You asked him. What are you looking at? Why would I answer? You didn't answer me either. Draco sneered. I'm sorry, I forgot having a conversation with you is impossible. You sighed. Draco took off his robes and hung them around the chair. Did you do it? You asked him. Draco turned around and looked at you. He didn't seem to know what you were asking. Did you break Harry's nose? You asked him. No, he said. Apparently someone who doesn't know me think I did. Apparently you know for some reason. You know my last name. Draco smirked. Knowing that you didn't know how it could possibly know was amazing to him. He wasn't planning on telling you. How do you know? Well, your first name or your last name? I read it somewhere, Draco said while swinging his robes around his shoulders. How could you possibly have read it somewhere? You asked. Bye, he said. You sighed and shook your head. He was so childish, unbelievable. He didn't even want to answer your question. You closed your book and decided to get up. You put it away and looked up to the girls' dorm. You were sharing with Pansy, which was total hell. You didn't speak much, and when you did, it wasn't friendly. She hated you, without you even doing anything. For the start, she hated you. You were a pure-blood Slytherin, so she had no reason. The only reason is that you were hanging out with Ron, Hermione, and Harry. You started walking upstairs. You opened the door to your room. Pansy was just pushing her suitcase underneath her bed. Look who decided to show up, she sighed when she saw you. You just ignored her. You left your stuff and your suitcases while you were at Hogwarts. You were afraid you'd lose everything. You opened one of your suitcases and grabbed your pajamas. You started changing into them. In the first 2 years, you would do it somewhere else, but you really just didn't care anymore. It didn't take you very long. You know, you can just go to the Gryffindor common room as well. That's where you belong anyways, Pansy sighed. You just passed her a death look and didn't care to answer. You just lay down in bed and switched off the light. Hello, I'm still here, she said. So, I'm tired. Good night, you said. You turned your back towards her and pulled the sheets over you. You were happy to be back. You missed Hogwarts. You had no idea what this year would bring. You didn't want to interfere too much. You knew that the Dark Lord was back, and what happened last year and everything, there was so much to lose. You didn't want to lose that all. Also, you didn't want to worry about it, so you just closed your eyes and drifted into sleep.